I laced up the whole thing and forgot to press record. Hi, I'm Diana from Starker's Corsetry, and I wanted to show you today how to lace up your own corset, whether it has a busk front closure or a smooth front.
Before you put your corset on, it's important to remember to loosen the laces as much as you can before putting it around your body, and also locating the center waist loops. Putting the corset on loose helps to reduce the strain on the busk closure. At this point, also check to make sure that your corset is on the right way up. Then locate the center pin on the busk closure and attach first only the center pin. After the center pin is done up, do up the upper and lower busk closure. Check to make sure that your corset busk is perfectly straight and your corset is sitting in the right position. Look for your modesty panel in the back and check to make sure that it's not hanging too low or too high. This is a good chance to adjust where that's going to sit. The lace loops at the waist cross over in the center, so you'll notice that the top part of the loop closes the bottom half of the corset and the bottom half of the loop closes the top half of the corset. If you have a newer corset or even a higher back corset, you're going to have to tighten the top of the corset with your fingers. You can do that either by grabbing an X of the laces closest to the top and pulling, and then follow that by pulling the X below and then the X below that, until you're able to pull all of the slack from those X's down through the waist loops. You can see the modesty panel for this particular corset is a little bit higher than the top. Ideally, this would have been adjusted earlier in the lacing process, and this is where a mirror might come in handy. Once your corset is at the desired amount of tightness, it's time to tie it. Some people will loop the laces around the front of the corset. I find that this can sometimes lead to the fabric at the waist wearing a little bit prematurely, and I don't necessarily recommend it. But if you do insist on doing it, a great place to hide the slack of the laces is right under the front. I prefer to tie them at the back and start with making a half knot at the waist, pulling the laces through, giving it a little bit more of a pull tight, and then making 2 loops and tying it into a bow. This part can be a little bit tricky and can take a little bit of practice. Once you have your long hanging bows, you can either leave them long, you could put them in a double bow, or what I like to do is gather them up and hide them underneath the modesty panel. They can be tucked underneath there and out of the way neatly. And there you have it. Your corset is all laced. Corsets without busk closures can be wonderfully unique and beautifully decorated at the front, and are great for weddings or costumes and leave a lovely smooth front, but they do present their own unique challenges. They'll come with several yards of lacing that is quite easy to get tangled in, so be very careful to make sure that it's a very, very wide opening. Be sure that the modesty panel is up out of the way, and if you have hair and makeup done, this is a great time to have a scarf over your head to protect your hair and face. Wiggle it on either over your head or up over your hips if you can, and then locate the center loops. Because the laces are so long on corsets without busk closures, they can get tangled very, very easily. So I like to turn the corset around so the laces are at the front and relatively easy to untangle. Once everything is relatively in place, I turn the corset around so that the laces are at the back again, and we locate the center loop and adjust the modesty panel. There are so many laces with these corsets. In each of the loops there could be about 6 yards of ribbon on either side, so keep them well out of the way so they don't get tangled. Some people even like to tie them on a doorknob just to keep them out of the way. To tighten up the top of the corset, grab the laces closest to the top with your thumbs or your fingers and pull downward, and bring all the extra down through the waist loops. Just like any of the other corsets, the loop crosses over at the waist, so the top of the loop tightens the bottom of the corset and the bottom of the loop tightens the top of the corset. So if you pull upwards on the loop, you'll be able to tighten the bottom of the corset. If you pull downwards on the loop, you'll be able to tighten the top. Sometimes doing a little shimmy can help the laces tighten down a little easier as well. Once your corset is at the desired amount of tightness, you want to tighten up the bow by starting with a half knot to secure the waist. Then with your fingers, create the bow loops and tie the bow at the back. Again, this is sometimes easier if you do this with a mirror. Depending on the look you want for this particular outfit, you might want to leave the laces really long and flowing, or you might want them up out of the way with a double bow. And this can be a little bit tricky to do behind your back, but with a little bit of practice, it gets easier. The double bow can then be tucked underneath the modesty panel or kept as it is. And as for these little guys, they can be tucked in as well. And ta-da! Your corset is laced up. So you finished wearing your corset, and it's time to take it off. Start by very carefully locating the center of the bow, and with your fingers, gently start to loosen the center of the bow. Again, it's quite easy to get these long laces tangled, so just go slowly here. And once they're loosened, you can sometimes bring them around to the side just to make sure that they're not going to be knotted. You want them nice and free for the left side and the right side to be separate. So we want to reverse engineer this by bringing all the slack that's from the waist loop out through the top and the bottom. So begin by grabbing an X of the laces closest to the waist and pulling out as far as you can. Bring all of that slack up through the top and down through the bottom by pulling the X's going all the way up and all the way down. And then grab the side, do a little shimmy to help loosen the laces, and keep going. At this point, it's going to be loose enough sometimes to pull down over your hips or over your head. Generally though, this is where you get overconfident and get stuck. So you want to try plan B. And that involves swinging the laces all the way around to the front so you can see where it needs to be loosened up. And finally, once it's really loose, you can again either slip it on over your hips or pull it on over your head. Again, watch your hair and makeup. Thanks for watching the video, and if you like it, visit my Patreon for more corset making tips, photos, and more at patreon.com/corsetry, or visit my website at www.starkers.com.